Attention! This is solely an informative video. We do not support, incite, or encourage any of the behaviors presented in the video in any way. It is not recommended for individuals under 18 years of age. Family Guy is a Fox cartoon that makes The Simpsons look like a normal cartoon. The series tells the story of the Griffin family, which consists of a couple of neglectful parents, 3 highly problematic children, and a talking dog. Since it's a comedy series, we try to overlook all of this, but there are things that simply can't be ignored. Premiering in 1999, the series is in its 22nd season, having been criticized since the beginning for its sharp humor and approach to highly sensitive subjects. I'm even afraid this video might be censored due to its heavy content, but if the series has been on the air all this time, I can't have this video removed just for talking about what happens in the series. Subscribe to the channel and like the video for more content like this. Take the opportunity to suggest the theme for the next video below in the comments. 10th season, episode 2, Seahorse Seashell Party. Brian, who is trapped at home during the storm, decides to use some magic mushrooms to pass the time until the storm passes. The problem is that the adventure doesn't go as well as he hoped. The hallucinations Brian experiences during the mushrooms' effect are quite disturbing, but on the other hand, it's amusing to see Stewie's care for his friend. It remains a controversial subject, as it involves the use of narcotics. 5th season, episode 14, No Meals on Wheels. After Peter receives unexpected money, he uses it to open his own restaurant. In an attempt to help, Joe tries to bring his wheelchair-bound friends to support Peter's business. However, Peter doesn't like this idea much, as he believes it reflects poorly on his restaurant to be frequented by wheelchair users. So, in a bout of prejudice, Peter decides to ban Joe and his friends from his restaurant. Despite being a controversial episode, it has a relatively satisfying ending. After Peter argues with Joe and his friends, he ends up in a wheelchair for 2 weeks, leading him to reconsider his actions. The important thing is that he learned his lesson. Although they force many jokes throughout the series about Joe being wheelchair-bound, this episode is indeed quite controversial. 13th season, episode 12, Stewie is enceinte. Stewie is worried about the possibility of him and Brian splitting up. In a reckless move, the baby steals some of the dog's DNA and impregnates himself, resulting in a disturbing litter of human-dog hybrids. When Brian discovers that the baby has done this madness, the first thing he worries about is what people will think they did together. Although it's not a natural pregnancy, it's really bizarre for a baby to be pregnant by a dog. At the end of the episode, Brian and Stewie ended up with more children than they could handle. Most of them have congenital defects that require continuous care that the ill-prepared parents cannot provide. After 2 of them fail to survive, they dump the puppies at an animal shelter without any remorse. It's a very bizarre episode anyway. 9th season, episode 13, Trading Places. Chris and Meg think that their parents' lives are much easier than theirs, while Peter and Lois believe that their children complain too much. So, to teach them a lesson, Peter and Lois decide to make a switch. From now on, the kids will be the adults and the adults will be the kids. Chris goes to work at the brewery and Meg becomes a housewife. Meanwhile, Peter and Lois take the place of their children in high school. Things start off well enough, but in the end, it doesn't work out too well for none of them. The pressure of having to support the family at such a young age caused Chris to start drinking heavily, experience heart palpitations, and be abusive to his family at every opportunity. It's a not-so-funny scene that depicts the reality of many families where children have to support the family very early on. 8th season, episode 21, Partial Terms of Endearment. Although available on digital media, the episode were never released on TV. Fox refused to broadcast the episode, which drew even more attention to the controversy it contained. In this episode, Lois is asked by a friend to be a surrogate mother. She agrees to become pregnant, but the couple who would receive the baby dies in a car accident. As a result, Lois has to decide whether to keep the baby or interrupt the pregnancy. It's a very unfunny and highly controversial episode. The only thing really funny in this episode is before the couple asks Lois to be a surrogacy, when Peter finds out that Lois is her ex-girlfriend. Since they didn't know yet what the couple was going to ask, Peter has some bizarre sexual fantasies for them. Other than that, the episode is all quite serious. 9th season, episode 4, Halloween on Spooner Street. Chris and Meg are at a party hoping to find someone to make out with. The only problem is that, unknowingly, they end up making out with each other in a dark closet. At the end of the episode, after initially being scared by the revelation, they decide to embrace the fact that they hooked up, even though it's very strange and wrong. 11th season, episode 15, Turban Cowboy. Peter befriends a Muslim man. They reinforce the Muslim stereotype when we find out that Peter's friend is a radical extremist planning an attack. To make the episode even more wrong, it also includes a joke about Peter running over a group of people during the Boston Marathon, and it was released a few weeks before the tragic Boston Marathon bombing. I really don't know which part of this episode was the most wrong. 7th season, episode 3, Road to Germany. In this episode, Brian and Stewie travel through Poland in 1939 to retrieve Mort, who accidentally stumbles upon Stewie's time machine. It's one that could generate criticism from individuals sensitive to themes related to World War II. Trapped in World War II Germany, Stewie disguises himself as Hitler. On his lapel, he wears a button featuring John McCain and Sarah Palin, candidates for President and Vice President of the USA in 2008. Several newspapers criticized this not-so-subtle way of insulting Barack Obama's rivals. 10th season, episode 3, Screams of Silence. Considered one of the worst episodes of the show, the episode revolves around the physical and psychological abuse of Quagmire's sister at the hands of her fiancé. The episode tries to be serious, addressing the issue of domestic violence, but as usual, it goes too far. Perhaps what lightens this episode is the attempt at social criticism and the relatively satisfying outcome of the episode. 12th season, episode 6, Life of Brian. One of the most controversial episodes of the series aired, showing the death of Brian, one of the most popular characters, after a car accident. Direct and emotional, this episode left fans with a strange and empty feeling. Brian was briefly replaced by Vinny, but the show's producers eventually listened to fans' protests and brought Brian back onto the show. Of course, changes can help keep the show fresh, but a beloved character being cut is rarely a welcome event. Nothing against Vinny, but we had already grown attached to Brian. They even had the audacity to replace Brian with Vinny in the opening for 2 episodes. It was very strange to see the opening with another dog, even if for a short time. Of course, when Brian returned, they put back the original opening. 7th season, episode 8, Family Gay. Peter volunteers as a test subject for scientific experiments, and one of them turns him gay. The premise is a mere excuse for very bold jokes. The Parents Television Council publicly condemned the episode and urged the FCC to fine the series. 4th season, episode 14, PTV. And speaking of the FCC, here are them. As expected, the show has had many run-ins with the FCC, the acronym in English for the Federal Communications Commission. It regulates everything that is broadcast in the USA, censoring what it deems inappropriate. In this episode, Peter sings a song that mocks the agency's criteria, telling the FCC to stick to its fines and threats where the sun doesn't shine. 6th season, episode 4, Stewie kills Lois. The show has already violent scenes that would put Tarantino movies to shame. But nothing tops this story, in which Stewie kills his own mother with 10 machine gun shots. In the following episode, the trouble gets more serious when Lois seeks revenge. The fight between them includes punches to the face, stabbings, chair shots, flamethrowers, and a lot of blood. 2nd season, episode 9, If I'm Dyin', I'm Lyin'. The series spares Not Even and Frank, the little girl whose diary has already moved millions of people around the world. According to this episode, German soldiers discovered her hiding place along with her family because Peter, also hiding with them, made a lot of noise while eating a snack. The Fox network attempted to remove the scene from the internet. Third season, episode 22, When You Wish Upon a Weinstein. Deep in debt, Peter wishes upon a shooting star for Jew as a gift. It was a joke about the supposed financial prowess of Jews, a stereotype that the Jewish community in the USA detests. The Fox network deemed the episode so offensive that it refused to release it on TV. It was only released in 2003, when the Cartoon Network, a cable channel, began rerunning the series. 10th season, episode 5, Back to the Pilot. Stewie and Brian stir up the biggest hornet's nest in the USA, the 9/11. They travel back in time, and Brian prevents the attacks. Upon returning to the present, they discover that things didn't go very well in the USA without the heightened nationalist spirit. They went back several times, unsure whether it was better to prevent or allow the attacks. Every time they returned, something went wrong. The episode sparked controversy that no one has the courage to talk about. Subscribe to the channel and like the video for more content like this. Take the opportunity to suggest the theme for the next video below in the comments. See you in the next video.